Why did God make us Edomites?
I hate my life.
This is our kingdom, a kingdom of righteousness. Praise the Lord. Praise ye the Lord.
Why did God make us Edomites? God hates us.
The only deliverance the other nations are going to get is deliverance right into slavery. They're going to be our slaves, thus saith the Lord.
Why did God make us Edomites? God hates us. Why? God, why?
Jeremiah 30:16 tells you every last one of the other nations which are non-Israelites are going into captivity. They're going into slavery underneath the Israelites when the Israelites go back into rulership. When is the Israelites going to go back into rulership? When the Lord comes. That's what he's coming to do. He's coming to set up the Israelites in rulership, beginning with King David. And when I say rulership, meaning the planet Earth, we're going to be ruling the planet Earth in righteousness. After he puts down the wicked. Who's the wicked? The Edomites, which are in power right now. Who are the Edomites? The so-called white man.
Why did God make us Edomites? God hates us. Why? God, why?
Praise the Lord, for he is greatly to be feared. He removed the wicked and put us righteous in power.
To victory and the dawn of a new era.
And when I say rulership, meaning the planet Earth, we're going to be ruling the planet Earth in righteousness. After he puts down the wicked. Who's the wicked? The Edomites, which are in power right now. Who are the Edomites? The so-called white man.
This is our kingdom, a kingdom of righteousness. Praise the Lord Yahweh. Praise ye the Lord.
Beginning with those top banking families, which happen to be so-called white people. We're talking about the Rothschilds, Rockefellers. We're talking about the DuPonts. We're talking about the Gettys, the Oppenheimers, and families like that. Okay, so when Yahushua comes back, he's going to take away their rulership, which they're enjoying right now. That's the long and short of it, of this ministry, man.
Pace, James. I need 200 pounds by sunset.
Yes, sir. I'm on it, Master.
Why did God make us Edomites?
I hate my life.
Why did God make us Edomites?
I hate my life.
Praise the Lord, for he is greatly to be feared. He removed the wicked and put us righteous in power.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem Rakakwadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers. And peace and blessings, salutations to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bahashem Al Shah, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bahashem Al Shah. All right, and what we're getting into this morning, dealing with morning news and prophecy. All right, civil war looming, and understanding some laws. Yesterday I came across a video, and you had this judge, I forget his name, Italian. I believe he's a Jake, but he deals a lot with also, the geopolitics. He interviews Colonel McGregor, okay, which is a war veteran, ex-senior officer in the military who, analyzes the geopolitics, okay, and him and his judge, they go heavy into that. But he's an actual judge, old school. I believe he's Jake. He got a little, flavor to him. All right, he's Italian, but he goes into the law of what's going on, what ICE, can and can't do, what the states can and can't do, which we know at the end of the day, all right, they're going to destroy, this thing called the Constitution. Okay, so we're going to go into a few laws and a few things on the books. And this devil got it set up to where he can move and he's not doing particular things that's going against the law, because the devil always, leaves loopholes for him to jump through. Okay, so just kind of expound on some things. This is little law. This be a little law class. I'm not no expert in the law. I know El Apostle Tahar, he's real good at that. But I've been looking into it, these last couple of days. So just go touch on some few things so we'll have, a slight understanding of what we see happening. Okay, with this whole thing with ICE, being deployed, the National Guard and local law enforcement, and it because it could be confusion, So this live stream will kind of simplify these things and go into, how things could go, with this civil war that's looming, because we know it's finna get chaotic, So let me put this put the mic on. So yeah, let's get a couple precepts, and then I got a few videos I want to go into, Lord will, you brothers, all right, and sisters are edified. Now, this is the book of Sirach, chapter 5, verse 15. It says, be not ignorant of anything in a great matter or small. So we in the time, where we're commanded, to be circumspect, all right, and there's particular things, that we should know, all right, and we should have an understanding on particular things because we in some very, crucial times. Okay, so this ain't the time, to have our head in the clouds, okay, and be lost, okay, when it comes to understanding what's going on around us, okay. So when you go to the book of Ephesians, chapter 5, verse 15, it says, see then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, okay. So when you go into, all right, this word circumspectly, all right, which is the Greek.
Strong's G 199. Akribos. Akribos.
Akribos. All right. And it goes into exactly, accurately, or diligently. And the scripture tells us what to measure the times diligently within itself. You measure the times by understanding what's happening in real time, and you measure it by the scriptures. Okay. So we accurately and diligently, search these things out. Okay, according to the spirit of Yahweh Shemal Shai, we measure it by the scriptures, man. And circumspectly, also goes into what to look around, to inspect what's going on around you. So we accurately, and diligently do these things, man. Okay. It says, let's go here. All right. It says, see then, back in Ephesians 5:15 says, see then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming, all right, the time, all right, because the days are evil. Okay, we're coming into some very evil times, man. Okay, we coming into some times, all right, because after the Day of Atonement, you can tell that the spirit changed in the earth. There's a different spirit in the earth. Okay, it's not the same. The Day of Atonement has brought about a whole different experience, man. Okay, a whole different energy, Salaki, a whole different energy in the earth. Okay, and these devils are revved up. Okay, for the sake of what? Fulfilling prophecy, man. Okay, so we're coming into some heavy times. All right, and we're watching the build up to the civil unrest, the civil wars, the Jacob's trouble. We're in the build up to that. Okay, these things are only going to increase. Okay, poverty, starvation, famine, these things are going to increase, man. Okay, because phase one is, uh, deploying ICE troops. Okay, the National Guard. All right, but what about when these certain militias rise up? These certain mercenaries join in. Okay. Then you got to factor in, all right, the UN troops. Okay, which are already here. You see? So this is just the beginning, and these things are going to gradually, get worse. Okay? You're going to see homelessness on the rise. Okay? So let's go here because this judge, like I said, he's going to make he puts it in layman terms. He makes these things very understandable. So I thought it would be good, for the body, so we can kind of understand certain things that's going on. So let's go here. So they had him on this show redacted. All right. And so I'm gonna play it. All right, and he's gonna go in. So we'll skip around a little bit to the main points, and I'll put the whole video in the chat. So you can go back and watch it. For yourself. It's worth to watch. So let's play it.
And ICE agents and National Guard pouring into liberal cities like Chicago and Portland, Democrats are warning that we are heading for a civil war. Where have we heard this before? They're trying to scare us once again. Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat, now says expect a civil war style uprising across this country.
We are going to fight it.
With the government shut down, now is the time for liberals to fight back against ICE and the National Guard. He warned months ago, by the way, that he was going to fight in the streets. Watch.
We're going to fight it in the courts, and we're going to fight it in the streets.
Now you have these activist judges who are trying to block Trump's moves into these cities, and liberal mayors now enacting what they're calling ICE-free zones across the city. ICE isn't allowed to do their job, essentially. In Chicago, Mayor Brandon Johnson just signed an executive order setting up one of these ICE-free zones. Just signed that executive order. Judge Andrew Napolitano is the host of Judging Freedom on the great Judging Freedom podcast and one of the smartest people that we know. And when all of this is hitting the fan, you get the liberals on one side, you get the conservatives on the other, you get the Trump administration saying one thing, you get liberal mayors saying another thing. We want to go to the judge to get the truth here. Judge, great to see you. I guess let's unpack these ICE-free zones.
Pleasure to be on with both of you. Thank you.
Always great to have you, Judge. So when you look at Brandon Johnson in Chicago and these ICE-free zones in this executive order, does it have any teeth, and what will the Trump administration be able to do?
The short answers are no and almost whatever it wants if it follows the law. So when the feds come into a municipality to enforce a federal law, the feds are superior to local law enforcement. They cannot commandeer local law enforcement to help them or to do their job for them, but law enforcement cannot interfere. So as offensive as it is to some people for ICE to be wearing masks, a California statute prohibiting law enforcement from wearing masks is enforceable only against California law enforcement, not against the feds. I mean, the short answer is that the state can look the other way and not help the feds, but it cannot aggressively interfere. The problem with ICE is that it is using an instrument which has never been ruled on by the Supreme Court to effectuate these arrests, and it's called an administrative warrant. It is not an arrest warrant based on the Constitution. It is something crafted by low-level courts to make ICE's job easier for it. There is no standard that ICE must meet in order to effectuate the warrant. So if they walk into a warehouse or an industrial facility where they see people who look like they're Hispanic and they say in Spanish, who here speaks Spanish, and everybody raises their hands, they proceed to arrest those people. Now, speaking Spanish or raising your hands is not evidence of any criminality and would never hold water if the Fourth Amendment were applied, which says arrests can only occur pursuant to a warrant based upon a probable cause sworn to by a judge. However, because this is a quasi-public place where ICE can just walk in, a warehouse, it's private property, but it's quasi-public, meaning anybody could walk in there. The lower courts have allowed these arrests. The Supreme Court has never ruled on the constitutionality of administrative warrants, and most judges, including this retired one, speaking to you now, believe that these administrative warrants are unconstitutional and should not be complied with. But that's what ICE is doing. As a result, they sweep up all kinds of people, including American citizens, who sometimes spend a day or two in detention until each person is examined. The Fourth Amendment requires this examination before arrest.
So yeah, just to catch up and sum up, what he's saying. All right. So what we have to understand is when the federal troops are dispatched, okay, to carry out orders, all right, from federal officials, then by default they have superiority over the local law enforcement. Okay. Now, the local law enforcement are not obligated to help ICE, because you will see, ICE, and then you'll see the local police, and you'll see FBI, and they'll be working in units. Okay. But what you're seeing in some states is that local law enforcement is not aiding ICE in what they're doing. Now, local law enforcement cannot, all right, prevent ICE from carrying out their duties. Okay. And the federal law enforcement can tell, all right, local law enforcement to stand down. Okay. So when these troops are dispatched, and you see ICE, when you see these FBI agencies, FBI, U.S. Marshal, ATF, or whatever alphabet, federal entity you see, they have superiority over local law enforcement. Okay. According to law. Okay, so what we're seeing happening now is these mayors are trying to create these ICE-free zones. Well, they don't have the authority to do that. The mayor can't create an ICE-free zone. The mayor doesn't have authority, all right, to tell federal entities where they can and can't operate. Okay, so they're doing it for politics' sake. All right, and what they're doing, they're causing because if these mayors, they're saying, well, look, this is an ICE-free zone. Well, what does that do? That creates hostility against ICE. And this is what these devils want. They want the hostility. And you might see local law enforcement, with ICE is dispatched into certain areas, okay, and you can see local law enforcement getting into it with ICE. They can have, so you can see local law enforcement coming together, coming against ICE, looking at it as government overreach. You see, so the Civil War can go so many different ways. It's going to be so many different divisions and divides. All right. And you got all this, law enforcement, you got all these, the state and the Fed conflicting, and you got this and that, and agent provocateur. Some groups are going to be set up just to, cause, war with these different federal agents. So, it's going to be a lot going on. All right. But just know, all right, because you brothers and sisters in different cities, when you see the alphabet, all right, the different government alphabet entities, they have superiority over local law enforcement. Okay. Now you have what you call civil laws. Now the federal agents can't do, okay, the job of, okay, the local law enforcement. They're not supposed to be, all right, arresting, okay, citizens because they haven't been trained in it. Now, what he just said, they've issued what they call administrative warrants. okay, which is a workaround, all right, the federal law enforcement being able to arrest and detain citizens, okay? So the feds are not supposed to come and operate as local law enforcement, okay? You see, but when you got these administrative warrants now, and that's why they're using ICE, okay? Because ICE is supposed to be what? Immigration and Customs Enforcement, okay? So when you go to here, an administrative warrant is a document that allows immigration and customs enforcement agents to arrest individuals suspected of violating immigration laws, okay? So when you go into, all right, it says, unlike a judicial warrant, an administrative warrant is issued by an immigration official or judge, not a neutral magistrate. Okay. So what this does, it gives ICE the green light, all right, to go into certain places, because he mentioned a term called quasi-public. Okay, quasi-public. And that's crucial to understand when you understand what these devils is doing. We're gonna tap into that. It says, unlike a judicial warrant, an administrative warrant is issued by an immigration official or judge, not a neutral magistrate. Crucially, an ICE administrative warrant does not authorize ICE to enter private property as your home without your consent. You can refuse entry, state that you do not consent to search. All right, so it still doesn't give them authority to come into private property. Okay, but how do they work around being able to come into private property? Well, they can deem you a terrorist. Okay, when they went into that building in Chicago, they said they was looking for what? These gang leaders. Gang leaders are considered domestic terrorists, and even that term, domestic terrorist, is a made-up term. All right, and it's not constitutional. Okay, you see, but this devil, he's able to make these terms up to strip your rights away to do what he wants to do. Okay, but this devil has it set up to where they about at the point to where they can do exactly what they want to do. Okay, and we're gonna keep going into it now. I don't know, you brothers, and if y'all remember the video we watched the other day. Okay, um, so let's go here. So I don't know if y'all remember the video we watched yesterday. So let's go to what quasi public. So, all right, quasi public. All right. So remember, they can't go into ICE. They can't go into private. All right, property. They can't go into your home. Okay. So they can't just go door to door and come into your home. Okay. That's why when you see ICE, they on the sidewalks in the streets. Okay. They not made it to the point to where they can go door to door. All right, because that's private property. Now in the quasi public, okay, they have free range to do what they want in the quasi public place. Because let's go into what a quasi public place is, and it's gonna make sense. It says a place or establishment is considered quasi public when it appears to be or functions like a public space, even though it is privately owned. The concept blends elements of both public and private property, all right, often raising legal, all right, and social questions about access and rights. It says private ownership with public access. It says this space is privately owned by a company, individual, or entity. It is open to the general public, either explicitly or implicitly. All right. Example: shopping malls, privately owned parks, sports arena, university campuses. All right. So remember yesterday we watched the video with this guy. He was telling the story of this woman from El Salvador, and she was saying she was down. She came to America because El Salvador was in the middle of a civil war. Okay. So you had the guerrilla fighters versus the government. So she she said the thing that made her leave is that soldiers came in. All right, she was at the what university. Okay, which university is considered what? A quasi public, all right, place to where federal government has free range, all right, to be dispatched and carry out orders from the government in a quasi public place. Okay, so remember she said that the guy asked her, what, why would guerrilla soldiers, come and kill everybody at a university, you know? And she said it wasn't the guerrilla soldiers, it was the government. You see? So when you go into a quasi public place, all right, guess what? You now walk into an arena where the federal government can carry out whatever orders, all right, that they want to carry out. Okay. So these devils have created these loopholes. So that's why they was able to go into the university. Okay. And it makes sense. So these universities, you are sitting duck. When you go to an arena, you're sitting duck. You go to the game or whatever. When you're chilling downtown in the French Quarters, guess what? You're in a quasi public place. Even though all these establishments are privately owned, but the fact that they're open to the public, that a civilian can freely walk in these private places, that makes it quasi public. That's why they're able to go into Lowe's and Home Depots, because even though they're private owned, Lowe's, Home Depot, okay, even certain restaurants they go get Issachar out of, well, that's a quasi public place. So the feds can go operate how they want in these quasi public places. Okay. So now, as you understand these things, like, damn, So, and I pray this is making sense, as I'm not a lawyer, all right, just going over, some basics, all right. So, yeah, let's get back to it. I'm gonna let this play. I'm gonna look up another term as well. We'll let it play some more, and we're gonna jump around. So these devils, they setting the stage to do, what they want. Okay. So yeah, Judge Napolitano, that's his name, Judge Andrew Napolitano, well, I think he Jake, he chill.
So let's talk a little bit, though, about the precedents, because Gavin Newsom is gaining a lot of popularity on X by talking tough about suing the Trump administration, saying we're not going to allow you to take our National Guard over to Oregon. You can't do that. But the California ruling, the courts ruled that the California deployment was legal because it was the National Guard protecting federal places and federal buildings. And that is something that I think the media sort of overlooks. They're acting like Trump has troops patrolling the streets like stormtroopers. What he can do is protect federal places, which is what was done in California. So if he continues to have that as his intention in, say, Chicago and Portland, then Democrats are just screaming dumb things, right? So can you make that distinction?
Well, in the California case, there was an actual trial. It was in San Francisco. I don't know why the trial was in San Francisco when everybody involved in the case was 400 miles to the south in Los Angeles. But the trial judge there, who was partially affirmed and partially overruled, found that the feds were chasing drunk drivers, arresting drug dealers, even chasing shoplifters. Well, the police like it.
Well, heaven forbid, right, that should happen.
Well, the federal law forbids that. The police like it because it's more cops on the street, or it's more authority on the street doing their job. But federal law expressly prohibits troops from engaging in law enforcement. So after this judge barred the federal troops, the appellate court said, well, we'll bar them from engaging in law enforcement, but we can't bar them from protecting federal assets, because there's another federal statute that says the president can use them for federal assets. So if the troops were used only to protect federal assets, which means a federal building and federal employees, then it's perfectly constitutional. But if they're being used for law enforcement purposes because the president believes that it will help law enforcement and will make the streets safer, he can't do that without Congress changing the law.
Right. But I mean, imagine.
So what you have to understand, let's go here because it's another term. All right. And this is a term you probably gonna hear a lot. All right. So you go into laws that prevent, all right, military from policing. And it's called, said the main law that prevents U.S. military from policing is the Posse Comitatus, all right, Act of 1878. This federal statute generally prohibits using the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, and Space Force for domestic law enforcement purposes. The law was recently expanded to explicitly include the Navy, Marine Corps, Space Force in 2021. But you realize what? They don't have ICE on it. All right. So this is why they're using the platform of ICE, okay, to federalize policing, okay, civilians, okay. But under the Posse Comitatus Act, you know, these other entities, the Army, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, all right, the Space Force, all right, where they're prohibited, you know, from domestic, okay, law enforcement. All right. It says um, separates military and civilian power. The law reflects a long-held American principle that civilian law enforcement, rather than military force, should be responsible for executing domestic laws. This was a reaction to the use of federal troops for policing during the Reconstruction era after the Civil War. It says restricts, all right, certain activities. The acts prevents federal military personnel from performing typical law enforcement functions like searches, seizures, and arrests. Okay, so the Navy, all right, the Air Force, the Army, okay, the Marines, all right, they're not supposed to be able to do, all right, local law enforcement functions as searches, seizures, and arrests under Posse Comitatus Act. But there was a workaround with that, which we're going to get into. It said, despite its general prohibition, the Posse Comitatus Act has several key exceptions that permit military involvement in law enforcement under specific circumstances. Okay, and which that takes us to the Insurrection Act. Okay, the Insurrection Act. All right, now this is why they're trying to get people to rebel. Okay, and this is why you see the National Guard being activated. We're going to go into this, and Apostle Tahar, he went into this. Okay, we play his video. It said the Insurrection Act. This is the most significant exception. It allows the president to deploy federal troops within the U.S. in response to insurrection, rebellion, or domestic violence when state authorities are unable or unwilling to maintain order. So this is why he's pushing. Look, Chicago is a war zone. Memphis is a war zone. You know, they like, look, you can't even walk the streets in Memphis. You know, you can't walk the streets in Chicago. You can't do this. People are getting mugged, robbed. So this is why they have to push that first. Okay, this is why they've allowed Jake to just run amok in these cities. Okay, because now it sets the stage for them to implement the Insurrection Act, which overrides the Posse Comitatus Act, which prohibits federal law enforcement from being able to execute search and seizures, all right, and arrests. You see? So this devil is breaking, all right, that constitution down to where the federal, all right, is going to have free range, okay? And federal already has superiority over the states, okay? And it says, in such a situation, the military is authorized to perform law enforcement duties. This is what these devils are working to. Okay, it says the Deposit Comitatus Act does not apply to state-controlled National Guard units, and this is why they've been using what? The National Guard. Okay, but what's to stop this devil from putting Marines in National Guard outfits? Okay, what's to stop him from putting Air Force personnel in National Guard offense uniform? Because it's just a uniform. Okay, what's to stop him from putting UN troops and mercenaries in National Guard uniforms? You see? So now this is opening the door, okay, for great persecution, man. Okay, for what they call government overreach. It said, and according to his law, this is gonna be lawful. It says a state governors can activate the National Guard for law enforcement purposes, such as during civil disturbances and natural disasters, without violating the act. However, if the president federalizes the National Guard and places it under federal command, the act, all right, does apply. All right, the Insurrection Act. Okay, so what's happening is because the National Guards are under the state, okay, authority, okay, but they can be taken over by federal in cases of what? Insurrection. All right, and this is why the devil is pushing for insurrection. So let's go. I got a video. Okay, I got a video going into this Insurrection Act. You know, as I pray this is making sense. You know, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just putting a few pieces of the puzzle together through spirit. How about your mouth shy? You know, just some things I was looking at. Okay, and this video is 14 minutes and 41 seconds. You know, 144. All right, because we need this to happen, you know, to get to that victory. So let's play this real quick. He's going to go into the Insurrection Act, and then Apostle Har, you know, I'm gonna play his video as well. He's going to go into it, you know. So let's go here.
I am not a historian, but neither are you. So how about we, the people, learn this stuff together? Welcome to US 101. And to kick off this week's episode, guys, I'd like you to do something for me. Look at this photo. Looks like a still from a movie, right? Soldiers dressed and ready for battle, standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, ready to fight and die for their country against, most likely, a foreign foe. But this isn't from a movie. This was a picture taken in Washington, D.C. this past week. Soldiers standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial to stop protesters, those in the streets crying out that Black Lives Matter, from doing something. It's a menacing photo, but it also brings to mind a thought. What would happen if the American military were deployed to take down Americans? Last week in the Rose Garden, guys, President Trump proudly exclaimed that he is a law and order president, which is fine. But after reminding America of what his favorite television show is, Trump decided to go ahead and say that if the protests around the country would not stop,
then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them.
And once Trump raised the idea of utilizing the military to stop these protests, something called the Insurrection Act of 1807 started popping up all over television, all over social media, and was talked about by everybody from constitutional and legal scholars all the way to your cool Aunt Jen. I had never heard of it until this past week, so I figured, well, if everybody's talking about it, and it's the Insurrection Act of 1807 being early 19th century, which means that this act has something to do with our American history, I should perhaps delve into it and look at you get a little bit of a glimpse as to how my thought process works. So what is the Insurrection Act of 1807 and what is its purpose? How about we start with the written definition of the actual act? Now, the Insurrection Act, which is a federal law, says, quote, "In all cases of insurrection or obstruction to the laws, either of the United States or of any individual state or territory, where it is lawful for the President of the United States to call forth the militia for the purpose of suppressing such insurrection, or of causing the laws to be duly executed, it shall be lawful for him to employ, for the same purposes, such part of the land or naval force of the United States as shall be judged necessary, having first observed all the prerequisites of the law in that respect. Which basically...
And it says land or navy. You see, land or navy. You see? And that's all within the Insurrection Act, man. Okay? So this devil has loopholes. And Trump is jumping through them. They using Trump to jump through these loopholes, man. So they already had this law from 1807. Okay? You see? So these devils, they got it. All right, as the brother put this is the brother. All right, Isaiah. All right, Shalom, Maki, Abashim, Al-Shai, Abashim, Krakatah. It said, woe unto them, their decree, righteous decrees, Isaiah 10:1, and their right grievousness that they have prescribed. So this was already scribed in 1807. Okay, and now he's going to use it, all right, to go to war with American citizens, man, beginning with the tribes. Okay. Hey, Jacob Trouble, hey, we right here, boots on the ground. Okay. And this devil got everything in his law needed. All right. It makes it lawful for him to do these things. Okay. They are already prescribed. All right. And then the ones and if it is a law in this way, it's going when it's civil unrest, none of the Constitution matters then. Okay. It's gonna be completely thrown out. All right. And we gradually getting to their point. Okay, so let's go let's go back to let's play a little more.
Means that the president has the right to send in the military to restore peace in times of crisis. But before just charging in with the military, there are a couple things that a president has to do before invoking the act. To begin with, the president, quote, must first issue a proclamation ordering the insurgents to disperse within a limited time. If the situation does not resolve itself, the president may issue an executive order to send in troops. It also allows the president to send in troops if there's a natural disaster, like if a hurricane hits, or in the case of a terrorist attack. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, hang on, states, those are sovereign entities, aren't they not? And don't they have their own forces? They have their own local and state police forces, as well as each state has its own national guard. Why would we even need this act? To which I say to you, you're right. More often than not, a state's forces should be enough to quell any insurrection happening within that particular state. But in some cases, there are times where a governor can call on the president to invoke the act. Matter of fact, this actually happened back in 1992 following the acquittal of 4 police officers who were caught on camera beating a man by the name of Rodney King, who was an African-American man. They went to court, they were acquitted, riots ensued. At the time, California's governor, one Peter Wilson, called upon President Bush, the first George Bush, to invoke the Insurrection Act because the state's forces could not handle the amount of rioting that was happening in California. So President Bush enacted it. Now, a governor or a state's legislature can call upon the president to invoke the Insurrection Act. However, a president can also go over the heads of governors to carry out that act if they so choose. The following section of the act reads as thus: whenever the president considers that unlawful obstructions, combinations, or assemblages, or rebellion against the authority of the United States make it impractical to enforce the laws of the United States in any state by the ordinary course of judicial proceedings, he may call into federal service such of the militia of any state and use such of the armed forces as he considers necessary to enforce those laws or to suppress the rebellion. So why does this act even exist in the...
So it's already set up to the president, because the governor can request, okay, the president to enact the Insurrection Act, okay, or the president can override the governor and say, look, y'all can't handle this, we coming in. And this is what you're finna see coming from Trump, aka Nero. Okay, so all of the power, right, is in the executive branch of, all right, of the White House, which is the branch of the president. All power is being swayed there. Okay, is being funneled to the executive branch for the sake of carrying out the orders of the elites, what the elites want, man. All right. And Trump is going to become more and more of a dictator as this thing goes on. All right. Now, Pastor Hart did a video. Okay. I want to get the one. And he was going into the Insurrection Act as well and dealing with Jacob Trouble. So let's play this, then we get a couple more precepts. This Elder Pastor Hart video he did, I believe it was yesterday. There was spirit because as I was going into these things, Pastor Hart had did a lesson on it.
Praise to Yahweh, Shem Yahshua, Bashem, Rakakudah, Shalom to the 144,000 rest elect out there. Shalom to you all. I'm going to entitle this video, The Insurrection Act and Martial Law. So I typed in Insurrection Act, which Nero 47 is talking about it right now. There's a table talk going on right now, going on for the last couple of hours. And they pretty much said Antifa is a terrorist organization. They're going to deem it by law as a terrorist, or officially call it a terrorist organization. Ultimately, they're going to call everything that's they deem to be against the state a terrorist organization. That means Israelites will be deemed as a terrorist organization, even though we read out of the scriptures. So, we're coming down to the wire. Jacob's trouble. If they didn't go up there and tell you what Jacob's trouble is, this is Jacob's trouble. Insurrection Act equals Jacob's trouble. Martial law equals Jacob's trouble. Police state equals Jacob's trouble. Suspension of the Constitution. We've been telling you this for years. It said the Insurrection Act is a U.S. federal law codified in Title 10 of that's military of the United States Code, U.S. Code. All laws in the federal U.S. is governed by the United States Code. That gives the president the power to deploy the U.S. military and federalize the National Guard to suppress civil unrest, insurrections, or rebellions. It functions as a key exception to the Posse Comitatus Act, because if you read the Posse Comitatus Act, U.S. military forces cannot do the jobs of police. But the Insurrection Act, circumvents that. In 1878, which otherwise restricts the military from acting as a domestic police force, meaning a police state, martial law. And they're going to shoot people and they're going to kill people. Let me do this. Okay, this is as of 1 day ago. What is Insurrection Act? Could it help Trump deploy troops to U.S. cities? Absolutely, absolutely. Under the Insurrection Act, it bypasses the Posse Comitatus Act, because they're saying it's an insurrection. They're taking over the government from the inside out. Insurrection Act. So you have the right to protest, and that's it. Peacefully protest, not hurt people, not break windows and throw rocks and Molotov cocktails at cars and go against the police and all that. They can deem that a rebellion. So there you go. So he's back by law. He's not violating the Posse Comitatus Act. because there's a rebellion, there's an emergency. See, when you get into these scriptures, man, we've been telling you that they're gonna come down hard on everybody. Jacob, that's Jacob's trouble. That's what have we been talking about for years? We've been talking about second Ezra 15, second Ezra 16. There's many precepts. There's many Revelation 12 and 12. Speaks about the dragon, the devil coming down hard because he knoweth that he had but a short time. The lamb with the two horns that spake as a dragon. That's draconian laws. So they coming down hard. They shall cast some of you into prison. Be ye faithful unto death, and I will give you a crown of life. That's Revelation 2:10. And then they're gonna usher in that chip. They're gonna usher in that chip. And once they usher in that chip, and it becomes mandatory, and the majority of planet Earth, take it. That's when this place is done. So we out of here. We out of here in months. So pray that Jacob's trouble come quicker. The quicker Jacob's trouble is here. We're in the beginning stages of Jacob's trouble, but we want it to get hot and heavy, and that chip to come. When that chip comes, we out of here. We out of here, man. Then you should really look up into the heavens. Anyway, shalom. On to the next.
Yeah, we here, man. Prophecy is entering into another phase. So let's get these precepts. There's spirit brothers already. Got some good precepts to close out with. So this the brother Isaiah, GMS in the truth, Orlando, Psalms 94:20. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by law? All right, and this devil has mischief already in his law, and it gives him, these loopholes, okay, to carry out, his agenda, his wicked agenda, okay. And this man wants civil unrest, all right. He wants to wage war, all right, on the American people. He wants to get draconian, okay, and he wants to enforce this new world order, okay. And he knows that he's going to have a time, a fight on his hand with the American citizens. So he has already the legal framework set up to where he can wage war on the citizens. He wants the citizens to start it though. He's dispatching these troops to agitate, okay, these American citizens. But if the American citizens take the bait, okay, and begin to become aggressive towards federal agents, okay, now he's justified in waging an all-out war on American citizens, man. Okay, so this is Isaiah 19:2, and says, and I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight everyone against his brother, and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. And that's going to be on all levels, man. Because you're going to have local law enforcement. You best believe they're going to start clashing with these federal agents, man. Especially if they get more draconian. Okay, state troopers, all is going to play a factor. Okay, but all these different law enforcement gonna clash, man. Okay, and then the feds, they already treat, okay, these state law enforcement is like do boys for them. Okay, so it's gonna be some clashing even on that level, man. Okay, so even this devil's law enforcement, there's gonna be clashes. It's gonna be a certain military. The military is gonna fracture. Okay, what you're gonna have mutiny. Okay, they're gonna start disobeying, their senior officers, and so it's gonna be a division on every level, man. Even before you get to the civilian phase, it's gonna be division, man. Okay, it says Revelation 12:12 says, therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth, all right, and the sea, for the devil is come down, all right, having great wrath, because he knoweth he have but a short time, man. The devil knows, okay, that he has a short time to try to pull this off. Okay, So prepare this devil, to see the devil go all out, man. Okay, because he got everything to lose. So this devil, he's gradually getting to the point of just coming down with this great wrath. As is spoken of in the scriptures. You see, so yeah, just wanted to get into that. So we learning at the same time. So Lord will you brothers, all right, and you sisters edified. Lord will these things make sense. So we understand what's happening around us real time and where we at according to prophecy, man. So until next time, say shalom, Kwam Yashala, Abba, Abba, soon, shalom.